This year I was lucky enough to snag the Old Fitz 10 Spring Edition. I don't know if you can tell on the camera, but I've already put a pretty big dent in it. Does that mean I like it? Stay tuned to find out. Welcome back to the Bourbon Retriever, where I go in the wild, hunt bourbon, and bring it back for you. Today we are reviewing the Old Fitzgerald 10-year, the spring edition that came out in 2023. I got this bottle in a Virginia drop a couple months ago I think in November, it might have been September. Virginia did a drop on a Saturday. It was announced that they were doing a drop, but they didn't tell you which bottles are going to be at which stores. They just told you there'd be 100 bottles, and here's a list of potential bottles that might be at your store. So it was a little bit of a gamble of when I should get there, how long I should wait. It was really hard to tell because Virginia hasn't done a camp out drop in quite some time, maybe 2 years. So I checked my local store. There were 3 people in line there around like dinner time the day before. I walked over probably around like 10 p.m., chatting a little bit, went home, and I decided I'd go back at 6 a.m. So I got up, went to the store, and there were still just the 3 people there. So I was number 4 in line. Now, being number 4 in line is a very dicey spot to be, especially for the Old Fitz. There's some bottles that only come in 3-packs, others come in 6, and then others will come in 12. But the Old Fitz is one of those that only comes in packs of 3. So I started chatting with people in line about what bottles they were chasing. The 2 big bottles that day were the Old Fitz 10 and the Parker's Heritage Rye that I just dropped. I am not a big rye fan, so the Parker's wasn't really on the top of my list. Of the bottles to get, the Old Fitz was the one I wanted most. But after chatting for him a little bit, I quickly realized all people in front of me wanted the Parker's, so if both dropped, I would get the Fitz. But if only the Old Fitz was there, those 3 guys would have taken the Old Fitz, and I would have been left with whatever breadcrumbs there were. Lucky enough, both the Parkers and the Old Fitz are there, so I was able to grab myself an Old Fitz. I haven't had the Parkers yet this year, so I don't know if I made the right choice. Leave me know in the comments which one you would have chose if you had the choice between the Parker's Heritage Rye or the Old Fitz 10. So before we get into the tasting, let's do a little bit of history on the bottle. The Old Fitz brand is a very, very old brand. It came out in the 1800s, and at one point it was produced by Pappy himself at the Stitzel-Weller distillery. So the bottle shape that this bottle is in is actually mimicking an Old Fitzgerald bottle from the 1951, I believe. It was called the Diamond Decanter. If I can find a picture online, I'll leave it somewhere up here just so you can kind of see the resemblance between the 2 bottles. This bottle is one of the nicer bottles just in bourbon in general right now. So I think if you had to make a list of the top 10 bottle shapes, Blanton's would probably be up there, but this Old Fitz is probably be number 1, if not top 3. Whenever I eventually run out of the Old Fitz in this bottle, I will keep this as my infinity bottle. Might take off the labels, I don't really know yet, but it's just an absolute gorgeous bottle to keep. So jumping to today for the Old Fitz brand, Heaven Hill now produces it. Heaven Hill did discontinue the Old Fitz brand. It wasn't really doing that well. So what great companies do when a product's not doing well, they keep the same product, but they change the marketing on it. The Old Fitz is still the same juice, but they switched it to the Larceny bottles. And that's what became the Larceny Small Batch. Later, they dropped the Larceny Barrel Proof, and then jumping to 2018, they brought back the Old Fitz in decanter bottles. All Fitzgeralds are bottle and bond, and it has a wheated mash bill, which means that the wheat is the primary secondary grain in the Fitzgeralds. Heaven Hill releases this twice a year, once in the spring and once in the fall. This one's the spring release. The fall release this year was the 8-year. Typically, Old Fitz follows $10 per age statement on the bottle. However, this bottle was an outlier. They were asking $140 for it. I think it was even as high as $160 at the distillery. So it was a little pricier, which I wasn't too happy about. But considering I'd never gotten Old Fitz before, I was willing to pay that price once just to have an Old Fitz on the shelf. So that's enough talking. Let's pop it in and see what it tastes like. The cork on this bottle is absolutely gorgeous. They got a nice little tax stamp there on top. I wish more bottles had the tax stamp. I think it looks really cool. However, I have to say that they are a pain in the rear to open. Okay, on to the aroma. All right, so I'm actually getting a decent amount of oak on this, a lot more than the first time I opened it. It is a 10-year age product. You expect a little bit of oak, but the first time I opened this, I would have guessed it was like a 6-year-old product. It was just super sweet with not that much oak, but it's actually coming in a lot more now. I'm getting a little bit of clove, very small dash of cinnamon, not heavy, but a little bit of cinnamon in there. And then I would say a light Demerara syrup, not caramelized, not very dark, but just a very small hint of it. I'm trying to figure out what fruit it is. If I had to pick one, I would say cherry. It's not quite Buffalo Trace cherry, but it's something in that vein. So overall on the aroma, I'm enjoying it. I don't think this is a $140 aroma though. It's pleasant, there's nothing off-putting, but this, I'm hoping there's more going into the palate because right now I'm a little disappointed at that price range. But let's go on to the palate. That first one hit me a little rough there. Sometimes when you don't do a warm-up pour, you need a couple sips to really appreciate it. A lot of times when I do these reviews, I will do a warm-up pour or something just to get my palate accustomed to drinking whiskey. I want to grab some water to help refresh my palate, and let's go for a second try. Okay, first impressions on the palate. I'm getting a medicinal cherry note with a little bit of chocolate in there. I think that's the char on the oak I'm getting there, that being 10 years old. Not a primary note, but I would say maybe a secondary or even further back. I'm getting a slight hazelnut. I wouldn't say it's a beam nut like the peanut shells, but this one's a little more nuanced than that. So I am enjoying the front and middle of the palate of this drink, but though when it gets to the back half, I'm getting a little bit of a bitter taste to it. I don't know if that's just something wrong with my palate today, but I'm just not enjoying the back half. And then it almost really just kind of dies off, which you would expect for a 100 proof whiskey. There's not going to be a long finish there. It is very creamy. It's not viscous, it's not coating the full mouth, but I am enjoying that cream flavor. I try and look for something that either has a lot of viscosity to it, very oily, or if it doesn't have that, something that has that nice little cream punch to it. Now, before I get to the final score on this bottle, if you're enjoying this content, hit that subscribe button. I'm a small channel, really trying to grow, and 1,000 subs is a monumental point in the YouTube channel. Many doors open once you get to the 1,000 sub mark. So if you're enjoying this content, please hit the subscribe button. It'd really help me out. All right, overall, how would I rate this Old Fist, the 10-year that came in 2023? I would tell people to pass on it. It's not worth what I paid for it. If you don't have an Old Fitz and like you just really need an Old Fitz on your shelf, go ahead and get it. It's fine. It's enjoyable to drink. It's just nothing special or unique. What you're really paying for in this bottle is the bottle shape. I think half the value in this bottle is the shape of it, which is kind of silly to say. If I had to put a price tag on the value of this bottle, I think I would be comfortable paying maybe $80 for it. I'm trying to think of like, other 10-year products like the Eagle Rare, that's 40. Once it's secondary, it's closer to 50. You have the Henry McKenna, that's 10 years also, and that's going about $60 right now. You have the Russell's 10, and I want to say that's like $35. So you have many legacy distilleries that are putting 10-year-old age-dated product out there at a much cheaper price. But me saying I'm willing to pay 80 is kind of moot because you'll never find this at 80. MSRP is 140. And you won't find it cheaper than that. Even if it's at 140, it's going to fly off the shelf. People love these bottles, and secondary right now I think it's closer to 400 on them. Who would enjoy this drink is someone who is probably getting into whiskey. They don't traditionally drink high proof, barrel proof products. I think that might be who this is targeted for, or be a person you could give this as a gift to. The problem is though, if I'm paying that premium dollar, I want a more complex drink, something that's more well-rounded, and just generally has overall more proof to it. There are far and few between 100 proof or lower whiskeys that I would say are worth $150. I do not regret this purchase. I'm happy to have an Old Fitz on my shelf, but I just have to let people know that the juice inside is just not worth the price tag. If you're looking to buy Weeders from Heaven Hill, I would actually suggest people go look at the Larceny barrel proofs. They have been coming out with much better batches in recent years. In fact, I think a couple of days ago, Minnick did his 100 whiskeys blind, and 2 of the batches of Larceny came in 2nd and 3rd place, which is just absolutely mind-blowing. Considering those bottles are, I think, $60, and They aren't allocated. I see them sitting on shelves in multiple Maryland stores. Now that might change now that once Minnick puts his list out, people probably will start hoarding them and maybe there'll be a secondary price on them. But if you're looking for a more well-rounded value whiskey that is a wheater, I would suggest check out the Largely Barrel Proof. So that's my review of the Old Fitz 10. But before you head out, if you're enjoying this content, check out this video or this video. And until next time, cheers.